Welcome back, everybody. I have not done many book reviews on here in the past, if ever, but I was looking to change that, as I like to read, and sometimes I also like to talk about what I've read. So I'm making this one my first, I think. This book is called On Track, Jethro Tull. Every album, every song. A little note before we get started on this one. The book's author, Jordan Blum, is actually a close friend of mine. We've hung out a bunch of times and talk about life and music constantly. With that said, he also understands that by my reviewing this, I intend to be honest and not hold back on any of my thoughts, whether they be positive or negative and critical, so don't go thinking I'm just gonna sugarcoat everything, just because I know him, okay? Okay. So now let's talk about what the on-track books are. You may have noticed that there's a whole series of these things out now for bands and artists including Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple and Rainbow, Yes, Queen, The Beatles, and a bunch of others. The focus of these books is to look back on and examine every album from a band's past catalog. This involves going through every single song from every single album, including the B-sides, the singles, the bonus materials, etc. Writing about the history behind the albums and songs, descriptions of what you're actually hearing and why, and the author's opinions on said songs. Now, that last part is no doubt going to be a point of contention for some. I already saw a few negative reviews of this coming from some Amazon UK customers, not realizing that they were also getting the author's opinions on these songs and albums alongside the history. And of course, they weren't so keen on those opinions either. While Jordan's no stranger to journalism, he's previously written for sites like Pop Matters and Metal Injection, and I think even Prog Magazine at one point. He's also no stranger to criticism for having opinions that differ from the popular ones. For example, Jordan stated that his favorite Jethro Tull album is actually a passion play. Now, for those who don't know, that is not a popular opinion to have in the slightest, but I say more power to him for having it. I always feel like people underrated that album to begin with, don't get me wrong, but I still don't think I could ever call it a favorite at the same time. I look at that album the same way I look at the Yes album, Tales from Topographic Oceans, very underrated, misunderstood album that contains fragments of some of the band's greatest material with a messy structure that's going to turn some people away. But let's stay on topic, the book itself. As I said before, the objective of the book is to cover all of the albums and songs in Jethro Tull's catalog by order of release date, and provide information behind the makings of them. Each chapter begins with the album name, year of release, additional specifications including the most recent re-releases of each, which I thought was a very nice touch, and an introductory paragraph about the album itself, as well as the band members, what was going on in their lives at that moment in time, etc. After all of this, you get information on each song from said album, combining background information, facts about the band members' lives during the writing process of those songs, and an analysis on what you're actually hearing and why, all before the author goes on to give their personal thoughts. I think what I enjoyed the most about this book was actually the mention of the bonus tracks and other material that was not always included with each of the album's initial releases. As a result of this, I also learned that I really want to get the special edition box sets for War Child, Minstrel in the Gallery, and Songs from the Wood. Unfortunately, eBay resale prices have shown me that that will not be possible, but that's not the author's fault. I did previously get the sets for Thick as a Brick, A Passion Play, Stand Up, and Heavy Horses, though, and I don't regret those one bit. There are a few issues I could see people having with the book, which I'll go into now. The first and the most obvious is that opinions are just that, opinions. Some could misconstrue this and take it as the author trying to present these opinions as a fact, or something that everyone else universally agrees on. I never personally felt this way when reading it, however, as it seemed pretty clear to me whenever Jordan was presenting a fact or trying to state a personal opinion, and even then the opinions he had were usually backed up by other information that he would provide, like great or poor album reviews, higher or lower record sales, etc. And again, if this needs to be stated, giving opinions is part of what the publisher specifically asked of the authors for this series of books. That's something that Jordan himself actually told me. I agreed with some of Jordan's thoughts in places and disagreed with him in others. And you know what? That's okay. I like hearing other perspectives on things. I liked reading about why Jordan thought A Passion Play was the true best Jethro Tull album, or why he found Broadsword and the Beast to be such a disappointing release, since everyone's opinion on that album is usually a mixed bag. Did I mention he also makes the argument that Ian Anderson's later solo works, Thick as a Brick 2 and Homo Eroticus, are the best Tull-like material since Stormwatch in 1979? Like I said, pretty bold stuff. Another point I could imagine some people taking issue with, though not too many here, the descriptions of music are great for someone who isn't too deeply versed in music theory, but to those who are, this may come across as a little disappointing. I didn't really consider this to be an issue either, though. When you think about it, the majority of writing for music and journalism today does not use this style, and there's a reason for that. When writing books and articles, you want to reach as big of a reader base as you possibly can, so by not writing in this style, you can easily reach out to a broader audience and ensure that more people will be able to follow you. It's just that simple. Some people will also find sections to be extremely wordy and over the top on the vocabulary. I can definitely see that being an issue in places, and I admit there were a few times I had to reread a sentence just to comprehend the message that Jordan was actually trying to convey. Lastly, the only solo material touched on is Ian Anderson's. There's nothing mentioned about, say, Glenn Cornick or Martin Barr, for example. I was advised by Jordan that this was also a decision on the publisher's part, but it's still a little disappointing all the same. All in all, I enjoyed reading this, and it made me want to revisit a few other albums that I'd previously neglected, particularly those from the 80s and 90s, some of which I think I may have been a bit unfair to. I also learned a lot of things I didn't already know about the group, especially Ian Anderson, so I consider that to be a plus. If you are the type of fan who has read every book, watched every video, interview, and so forth, you may not be getting much of anything new out of the info presented here. This was really meant to be more of an analysis on the music more than a history of the group itself. In fact, to those looking for something more along those lines, I'd actually wait until November, when the official biography, The Ballad of Jethro Tull, comes out, which should be more to your liking. So as I said, there are some hardcore fans out there that may not enjoy this as much if they're already know-it-alls in the field of studying this group, but for someone who hasn't already delved into this material before, it's an overall very good account of the many stages of this band's career, and provides a pretty deep and concise level of information atop the thesis segments, and I hope that you'll all give it a try. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and let me know your thoughts on Jethro Tull, as well as the book if you also got to give it a read. Until then, take care, my friends.